Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Today we're going to make a special Southern Italian dish called fish in crazy water. It's going to be nuts, let me tell you. It's actually not as bad as it sounds. I've used rockfish. It's fresh caught rockfish. There's a little bit of garlic involved. There's some onions involved. There's tomatoes involved. There's, of course, olive oil involved. But those are the two main ingredients typically, tomatoes and olive oil, in all of the different variations that you'll come across. Of course, we're going to add a little bit of hot pepper in there too. Anyway, it's going to be phenomenal. You're going to learn how to cook fish in a new way, potentially, I don't know, but in a very, very gentle way, which respects the actual fish itself. So we'll see. But before we do that, please, thumbs up, like, subscribe, leave a comment at the bottom, ring the bell so that you'll know when I release another video, which is literally every day of the week, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on the weekends. All right? So now let's get in the kitchen and attack this thing. See you in the kitchen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. We have a few slices of bread. I have about 5 here. Well, I have exactly 5 here. We're only going to need 4, but I like to cook a little bit extra in case somebody wants more. All right. We're also going to use a red onion. We're going to use some parsley. We're going to use some diced tomatoes, some white wine, some mineral water, believe it or not. We'll use 100% California extra virgin olive oil that I love so much. We're also going to use some fresh oregano. We're going to use a fresh red pepper. We'll use some garlic and some lemon. And for our poached fish today, I have chosen rockfish. Believe it or not. This is wild caught, and you know me, if you have not seen my video on the sous vide salmon, you should watch that. Anyway, I'm going to process all these ingredients and we'll be right back. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is toast our bread. We're going to serve the fish on top of the bread, and this bread should be toasted. So I've placed it in a small sheet pan. This is a quarter sheet pan. Typically, a half-size sheet pan will fit in most domestic ovens, most home ovens, whereas a full-size sheet pan, the kind that you use in the restaurant industry, is going to be way, way too big for most ovens. There are those people that went out and had commercial ovens placed in their homes, and that's a nice thing. You can use the regular size sheet pans, although unless you're entertaining for a lot of people, I don't see why that would be necessary. Anyway, these are going to go get toasted. After they're toasted, we are going to rub them with garlic, all right, so they can get that flavor. Drizzle a little bit of olive oil on them, and of course hit them with a little bit of salt and pepper. And I will do that, and we'll be back. While we're waiting for our bread to toast, we can work on this onion. I like to top and tail and then cut down the center. And we're going to cut this onion very, very thin, and we're going to cut it pole to pole. And the reason for that is because I like the look of the way the onion is sliced pole to pole. It doesn't necessarily need to be sliced pole to pole, but because it doesn't need to withstand extreme temperatures and a lot of cooking. But I like the look of the onions when they are cut this way. So we'll do that and come back. In the event that you're interested, all I do is put my knuckles up here on top as I pull back my fingers, and then the knife is going to go up against my second finger's knuckle like this, so there's really no way that it can get my fingers. And look, my thumb is behind my index finger, but it also provides some semblance of control over whatever it is that I'm chopping. Come straight down, and you just move back very, very slowly. All right, and you can see how thin you can make the slices, which is exactly what we want. We want something a little bit elegant. and not dainty, but soigné. So there we go. That's what you want, basically. Very, very nice, very thin. They will give up a lot of their flavor, these onions, to the water when we poach the fish. And again, they're going to break down. They're not going to be these big pieces of onion that no one wants to eat, but these smaller, not paper thin, but close to very, very thin onions are elegant, and they're a pleasure. So let's move forward. All right, we're going to kind of do the same thing with the onions that what we did with the, pardon me, we're going to do the same thing with this garlic that we did with the onions, except for one clove. We're going to cut that one clove in half this way, because we are going to use this clove, or these 2 halves of these garlic, to rub on the bread when they come out. Now, at first, if you've never done this, you're going to think that it's not going to have an effect on the flavor of the bread, and it will. Believe it or not. Try it. You'll see. By just rubbing the garlic on the bread will take on the flavor and aromas of the garlic. It's amazing how it works, but the oils of the garlic go into the flesh of the bread, and because the bread is coarse, it almost acts as a grater of the bread on a very, very micro level. All right? And then now these, we're just going to slice really, really thin. And to me, it doesn't matter whether it's this way or this way. And so when I'm done with that, I'll come back. All right, now that our garlic is done, our 2 halves are here, and then we've sliced the rest of them. We'll deal with the red pepper. There's not much to do here, believe it or not. I'm just going to cut this in half this way. It's extremely hot pepper. So that, when we put it in the poaching water, will give us enough flavor and heat. And then we're going to take it out in the typical Italian fashion. All right, here we are with our fish. Before we do anything, we are going to lightly salt our fish. Okay? I'm using kosher salt, believe it or not, this time, rather than regular salt. And the reason for that is because there's larger crystals, and we're going to use a lot less salt than we normally would. Why would we use less salt than normal? Couple of reasons. The biggest reason is that these fish fillets, these rockfish, are quite thin. So if we were to put too much salt on them, they're going to be basically salt. You might as well have salt cod rather than poached fish. But we'll do that, and we'll let the salt, first it'll draw out the moisture, and then it will draw the moisture back in, and we'll just leave them like this. It will essentially, it goes without saying, but it's going to obviously add flavor. It's a dry brine, if you want to call it that, of our fish. So we'll be back. We're also going to need some chopped parsley. I'm not going to bore you with this, but suffice to say, I didn't fully take off all the stems or anything like that. This is a very rustic fisherman's sort of a dish, and so we just need a rough chop. They don't have to be very, very finely chopped, the parsley leaves. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll come back. All right. Our bread is nice and toasted. It's not fully like brown, which is not what we want. We want them to look just like this. And now, quickly, while they're still hot, we are going to take and rub them with these garlic halves. As you can see, I don't know if you can see the garlic as it's being rubbed on. You can see the oils of the garlic glistening on the bread. I don't know if that's apparent from the video. We're going to now drizzle this with a little bit of olive oil. Just like that. Add a little bit of salt. And you have to do it from up high, because that way the salt actually gets dispersed on the bread itself, as opposed to, you just getting it into one particular area, just like I did there. And we're also going to grind a little bit of pepper on top of that. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back at the stove. Turn the heat on, a little bit high now, but we are going to turn it down in just a second. I'm going to add a little bit of oil in here. I'm going to be a little bit generous because remember what I said, Southern Italian and oil are an inseparable combination. Now we're going to take our sliced garlic and we're going to put it in here. And we are very, very slowly. You see how thinly I've sliced the garlic? It can almost be fanned out like a deck of cards. Except for that one right there. That's kind of a larger piece. But so you can see how this will melt down. Very, very slowly. I do have the heat on a little bit higher than normal. And that is so that we can get up and running a little bit faster. You can see the bubbling starting to happen there. And once we see that, it's time to turn this down really, really low. All right? And so we're going to cook this, and we'll add our hot pepper in there too. All right? And we'll remove this a little bit later because, again, remember what I said. This is an extremely hot pepper. By the time we're ready to add the other ingredients, the pepper will have lent its heat to the oil, and then we'll remove it. It's done its job. We're not going to take the garlic out like they probably would take out in Italy, but we are going to very, very lightly saute this, and we'll be back. All right, we are back. You can see how the garlic is turning a very, very light pale golden. All right, and what we're going to do now is add in our sliced onions, and we're going to cook these until they get a little bit of color. But in order to help us along so that we can draw out the moisture of the onions, we are going to salt them just a tiny bit, not too much, just a little bit. So we'll cook these up. Until we get a little bit of color on them, and we'll be back. Now, in the meantime, while all of this is going on, I have also taken the stems from the parsley that we're going to use, and I have cleaned them. I've taken the tomatoes out of the can, because we do use canned tomatoes. It is, for us, today is the first day of spring, and so, there's really no really great tomatoes out there. If you want to use this particular recipe, then we have to use the organic. I use organic canned tomatoes. So they're canned at their freshness at the end of the summer, and so they're always going to be good. All right. And of course, we've washed our oregano, and our fish, as you know, is waiting there. So you can take this time to, when this is slowly cooking away like this, to prepare your other ingredients. You don't want to do anything that's too intensive, labor intensive, that's going to take a lot of time, because you want to have that stuff ready before you begin your mise en place. It's very important. Otherwise, you're going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off, unless of course you're so good and so fast. But even then, the best chefs have everything already made. So, but taking the tomatoes out of a can is not that big of a deal. So small things like that you can do while you are cooking, because this is cooking at such a low rate. All right, so enough about that. We'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, we're back. As you can see, we're getting a little bit of color on these onions. All right, and so we don't want to brown them as in fully caramelized. That little bit of browning is just about perfect. We're going to add in our wine. All right, our water. Now this traditionally is said to have been, because they call it crazy water, I've been told that it has to be carbonated water, which I find very, very hard to believe by virtue of the fact that the carbonation is all gone. You would never waste carbonated water, which in Europe actually costs more than still water, or any still water for that matter. You just get it out of the tap. So I find that very, very hard to believe. So I just use regular water it's filtered water. It's a good water. It's not like something out of my tap here. And then of course we're going to add our tomatoes in there as well. Now this will come to the boil, and I'm going to add our oregano. This will come to the boil, and we're going to simmer this for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, to get the flavors all melted together. This is essentially our poaching liquid, all right? And I've made a little bit extra here because I'm going to use this for a different purpose as well, but you get the idea, all right? So we've browned our onions. Those are going to add some flavor. We have the red pepper. We have the hot pepper in there. We have the tomatoes now. We have the parsley stems, which of course add flavor as well. We have a little bit of oregano. You don't want too much because it's overpowering. We have our tomatoes and then of course our wine and our water. All right, so all of this works perfectly together to create a poaching liquid that will lend its aromas and flavors to the fish when we go to poach it. So I'll come back in about 10 to 15 minutes. 2 seconds for you, 10 to 15 minutes for me, after this comes to a simmer. See you in a bit. All right, we're back. You can see that this now has come to a simmer, and we are going to let it reduce down and meld its flavors for about 10 to 15 minutes. It will concentrate the flavors. This will cook down a little bit, and then we'll be ready to nestle in our rockfish fillets so that they can poach very, very gently and absorb all of these wonderful flavors. I'll be back when we're ready to put the fish in. All right, we are back. I have removed the parsley. I have removed the oregano. I can't, for the life of me, find those hot peppers, believe it or not. But eventually they'll come. They'll surface, and we'll figure it all out. This is the most important part of the entire process. I'm going to turn off the heat. Okay, we already have a lot of heat in the liquid. The next thing that I'm going to do is completely off of the heat. I'm going to nestle in these rockfish fillets. All right? Now why? Because fish is extremely gentle, and if we don't treat it with respect and consideration, what will end up happening is that it will overcook, it will fall apart, and it will be essentially, it won't be worthless, but it'll be a waste. Imagine if we had to fish through all of this sauce and pull out the little pieces of fish. It wouldn't look nice on the plate. We really couldn't serve it. So what we're going to do is we're very, very gently going to lay this fish in. Now, obviously, some of you are going to say, well, when the fish goes in, isn't that going to lower the temperature and make it difficult for these fish to cook? It's going to lower the temperature 100%. Whoever's thinking that, whichever one of you is thinking that, if anybody's thinking that, you're correct. But not to the point where we're not going to be able to properly cook this fish. Not only will it cook just fine, it's going to cook rather quickly. All right? So we nestle them in there like that. And in a matter of just a few minutes, that fish will be fully cooked. All right, the fillets are thin enough. If you have a thicker fish, that's a different program. But right here, right now, that's about what she wrote. That's perfect. All right, so we'll come back when these are done. One other thing I forgot to mention is I am going to cover these fish to keep the heat in so it's trapped, and it can cook from the top side as well as the steam goes to the top and it's kept in there. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes and they should be perfectly done. All right, so let's just remove these so that you can see what it's going to look like. If we're very, very gentle, extremely gentle with this fish. Let's remove this one. You don't worry about that stuff that's underneath it. We don't want to damage the fish because we don't want that stuff underneath it. It's going to be just fine the way that it is, and we'll adjust all of that in a moment. So look, see how delicate that is already? It is falling apart. Okay? That basically a signal that says, you see, let me show you here. Look how translucent it is right in the center. I don't know if you can see that. Let me try to expand it for you. But now you know that it's just perfectly cooked when it is just translucent, like this. All right, we'll be back as I take the others out. All right, so the fish is out. We're going to take our parsley. We're going to stir it in. Just like that. And then we'll adjust the seasoning of the sauce. All right. Wow. Believe it or not, it could use a little bit of salt. And we don't need any pepper at all. That one hot pepper has really made a huge difference. The heat is there, and I love the heat. And boy, is it ever there. So there we go. We'll bring this back up to temperature a little bit, and then we will plate it up. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. What did you think of that? Kind of a different way of cooking fish. Very, very, very gently. A lot of people think, oh, but the fish is not cooked. Yes, the fish is cooked. I've shown you where it's translucent, and that's perfect. You don't want it to be overcooked. It's going to fall apart in this sauce, and then you'll have to go after it, and it becomes a huge mess. But if you use a fish slice the way that I did, and gently work with all of the ingredients, then you will have something superb, something soigné, okay? It will be a beautiful thing. And here it is. You saw me plate it up. Now it's the moment of truth. Let's see how good this thing is going to be today. Wow. This fish is perfectly done. It doesn't fall apart, yet it's soft, it's tender, it's absolutely out of this world. The tomatoes are there, the heat from the pepper, I told you, I put one of those hot peppers in there, that was enough for the whole thing. It is very, very hot, but I like that, all right? And then, of course, the olive oil, that final benediction with a little bit of the lemon juices in there. Let's taste this. Oh, the crostini. That just makes it. And I'm not a fan of like soggy bread, but when it has this flavorful broth as part of it, and the fish that's perfectly cooked, and the tomatoes, and the olive oil, and the parsley, and the garlic, and the onions, you couldn't ask for anything more. So, stop watching me eat, please. If you were here this would be yours. I would share this with you, but you're not here. But you can go out, buy all the stuff that you need. The rockfish was very inexpensive. Any fresh, flat fish, or round fish, pardon me, even flat fish will work, that you can find at your local fishmonger is going to work right here. You can use the canned tomatoes because they're canned at the peak of their freshness. Everything else you've seen me do, it's very, very easy. You'll be able to do it. It'll be phenomenal if you try it, and I'm sure that you'll love it. You'll make it over and over and over again if you do. So, without any further ado, please go and get this stuff. Get in the kitchen and make it. And I'll see you again very soon. Thank you.